My name is Jamin Goecker. I'm a realtor in South Central Alaska, and my mission is to help you to build an intentional and significant legacy for yourself and your family by coaching you in real estate. And to help you do that today, what I did is I went ahead and created a market update for what's going on in Anchorage. This is obviously the biggest market that we have in all of Alaska, so it's one that we keep a pretty close eye on. If you're trying to see what's going on in Alaska as far as real estate goes, actually did something a little different for a lot of you today as well. If you're wanting to go take a look at the graphs I use at your own leisure, do make sure you check out these graphs in an article that I post to LinkedIn every week. Link for that is going to be down below till like the next day that I post this, just till I have time to transcribe everything and put it over there in LinkedIn, but it's going to be there. Before we get started, do make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you can receive more information. And without further ado, let's go and jump into today's market update, looking at the residential, the condo, and the multifamily market. The first thing we're going to look at is the residential market, and the first thing the residential market we're going to look at is the amount of active inventory. Now, over here, what we've seen is there's been a pretty significant cut in the inventory, even year over date, because last year was an anomaly and it was low on inventory. This year, it's even more so. Last year, it was about 520 homes that were on the market. Now it's about 380. So you can see a pretty big drop in the inventory. The next thing we're going to look at is what's going on as far as the sold units go. So here we do have a bit of a drop, more so than we've seen for the rest of the year. And that is, it went from about 360 homes that were sold this time last year to about 330 homes that were sold this year. This is significant because, as you can see, looking at the rest of the graph here, most of the time this year, we've actually been right at or actually above what we've sold for the previous year. So we'll talk more about why that might be in the summary, but just something to keep an eye on. The next thing we need to pay attention for what's going on as far as the residential market goes is what's going on in the average sold price. So it's actually gone up 7.2% year over date. So what we see is this time last year, average sold price was right about 397,000. Now it's about 425,000. So that's a pretty sizable spike in the average sold price for properties here in the area. Is that going to continue? Maybe. We'll talk about that in the summary though. Next thing we're going to look at is what's going on in the condo market. Now let's first off look at what's going on in the inventory. This time last year, there were about 340 condos that were on the market. Now we're seeing it's a lot closer to about 230. So what you see really across the board, well, you know what? I'll save that for the summary. Next thing we're going to look at is just what's going on for the number of sold condos in this market. So what we see is the number of condos that sold this time last year was about 130. And now what we're seeing is it's actually about 116. So definitely a drop in the number of condos that have sold year over date, and that's definitely an indicator for how the market's doing. We'll kind of dissect it a little bit in the summary. Now, the next thing we need to look at is the average sold price. So the average sold price has gone up by 6% year over date, because we were at roughly 216,000 this time last year. Now it's about 230,000. So even on the condo market, we are seeing that the average sold price is going up at a faster rate than what we've seen in previous years. Let's take a break real quick here. For those of you who are looking at selling your home in the near future to take advantage of this market, you're probably just wondering what the process looks like as you're going to get it on the market and to sell it. If you'd be interested in just receiving the basic seller guide for walking you through what it looks like with selling a home in this market, feel free to reach out to me at my website. Link for that is going to be down below. You'll be able to register, and in the little notes, just make sure you put in there seller guide so I know what it is that you're asking for. And I'd be more than happy to send that over to you and talk a little bit and see what other questions that you do have. Obviously, include your phone number. I can't do much for you if it's just email. Now, without further ado, let's go and finish up today's market update. Now, the first thing with multifamily properties is the active inventory, obviously, and we see that this time last year, there were 190 properties that were available. And this year, we're seeing it's roughly about 137 properties that are available now. So we are definitely seeing kind of a decrease in the overall amount of inventory that's available for multifamilies in Anchorage. The next thing that we want to look at is the number of properties that have actually sold. This time last year, 47 properties sold. This year, 49. So even with inventory being down so much, we're still seeing that we are selling quite a few properties. Next thing we're going to look at is the average sold price. So the average sold price has definitely increased from what we usually see. So it's increased by about 13% year to date compared to this time last year. So the average sold price this time last year was about 435,000. Now it's about 490,000. So that's obviously a pretty significant uptick for what we usually see for multifamily properties in Anchorage. But obviously there's a lot more to it than that. These are just overall averages, and it doesn't really account for the fact that, yes, the average sold price for multifamily properties has probably gone up, but it's also not accounting for the fact that this does include everything from the little duplex all the way up to the big commercial deal for like 30 units or something like that. So it includes everything together. But I have no doubt that the average sold price has gone up for multifamilies. Let's go and do the summary real quick. And in order to help me do that, I went ahead and created a little chart here. Again, this is going to be in that article that's going to be on LinkedIn, so do make sure you go check that out. But what this does show us that the overall number of properties that have sold has increased by 10.5%. And this is also really telling the days on market has decreased from about 41 days on the market to 22 days on the market for residential properties. This is obviously a big deal because it means the market has really accelerated compared to this time last year. And that's really what we're seeing across the board, is that properties in this market are moving quickly, and that's probably not going to go away anytime soon, just as long as the interest rates remain low and the demand remains high. Because all that means is that we're going to have a lot of people who want to buy houses, not a whole lot that are available, because a lot of sellers don't want to sell right now because they can't find anything that's available for them. So it's kind of this vicious cycle that's keeping not a lot of properties on the market right now. But that's obviously all going to change as soon as interest rates start going up, demand starts going down, and then we're probably going to see a bit of a relaxing, at least on the residential side. Now, looking at condos, what we're seeing over here is the number of sold units has increased by about 28%. So this is huge difference from what we saw this time last year. And that definitely is reflective also in the number of days on the market that we're seeing. I believe there was about a 27% drop in the number of days on market. So this is all pretty significant, despite the fact that kind of across the board, inventories remain within about 20 units of each other month over month. The number of properties that have actually sold has increased dramatically year over date. Finally, let's take a look at the multifamily market. So the number of properties that have sold in the multifamily sector is actually increased by about 35%. Days on market has gone from about 73 to 52. So this is significant because it does tell us there's still a lot of demand for multifamily properties in Anchorage. Not quite as much as what we're seeing in the Matsu Valley because of some assembly actions that have made it less agreeable to be an investor in Anchorage, but it's still very agreeable to a lot of folks to be investors in Anchorage because overall, the cost of rent has gone up, which makes a lot of properties more feasible. There are definitely some good options for investors right now. You just have to make sure that you're not going off of old investment models and just trying to find underpriced properties, because that doesn't happen as much in this market. You need to find properties that are under rented or not being used to their highest and best use just with the zoning. So that's been your summary and your market update for Anchorage. I hope it's been useful. Make sure you give this video a like. Let me know if you have any questions on Facebook through my Facebook down below, and be happy to answer any of those that I can for you. And without further ado, you have a great afternoon. We'll talk with you later.